My own children sold me like an old piece of furniture while I pretended to be asleep, listening to every poisonous word that came from their filthy mouths. When the old woman dies in the nursing home, we'll split everything 50-50, Raphael whispered to Paula while counting the bills he had just taken from my safe. I hope it won't take long. I'm tired of pretending that I love her, my daughter-in-law responded, that viper I took in as my own daughter. There I was, Elena, 66 years old, hiding behind the door of my own bedroom, watching my children plan my death as if they were planning a vacation. Brenda had my will in her dirty hands, laughing because she thought she had hidden it well. Look at this, brother. It says she's leaving everything equally to us. Good thing she never knew we had already read it. The smell of betrayal filled my house, mixing with the cheap perfume of Paula and the cigarette smoke Raphael was smoking on my green velvet couch. I know I bought when they were children, and I still believed in family love. The light from the crystal lamp that had been my mother's illuminated their demon faces as they divided my life like butchers. The nursing home in Madrid is already paid for 6 months, said Brenda, checking her phone. By the time the money runs out, she'll be so ill that she won't even notice anything. The three of them laughed like hungry vultures. And I felt something dying inside my chest. It wasn't my heart, it was my faith in humanity. Paula took my pearl necklace from the jewelry box, the same one that had belonged to my grandmother, and put it on in front of the mirror as if it were already hers. This goes perfectly with my sister's wedding dress, she murmured, caressing each pearl that had more history than her entire family combined. Raphael clapped like a seal. You look beautiful, darling. That necklace always looked better on you than on the old woman. The word old woman came from my own son's mouth like a spit. That boy I had raised with love, who I fed with my own milk, who I cared for when he had pneumonia and the doctors said he could die. That same boy now called me an old woman, as if I were trash to be thrown away. My body trembled with restrained anger as I watched Brenda open my photo albums and throw them one by one into the trash. 40 years of memories of first smiles, first steps, happy birthdays. Everything went straight into the trash as if it had never existed. What does she need photos for? She said with cruelty that made my blood boil. Raphael opened my laptop and began checking my bank accounts with a smile that turned my stomach. Look at this. The old woman has more money than we thought. We can buy the apartment on the beach that Paula always wanted. My daughter-in-law jumped with excitement like a spoiled child. Yes, and we can also take that trip to Europe we could never afford. Europe with my money, the apartment with my work, luxuries with my sacrifice, all paid for with the blood of a woman who killed herself working to give them a better life, who forgot about herself so they could have everything. And this is how they paid me, planning my exile while spending my inheritance before I was even dead. The living room clock marked 11 p.m. when Paula asked, "What if the old woman resists tomorrow?" Raphael laughed with a malice that made me shiver. Everything's already arranged. Dr. Maurice will help us. We'll say she has senile dementia and can't take care of herself. The papers are already ready. Maurice, my trusted doctor, the same one who had cared for my health for 15 years, was also part of the plot. The man I trusted with my pains, my fears, my medical secrets. He had betrayed me for a few bills. My own doctor was going to claim I was crazy to justify my forced deportation. That night I couldn't close my eyes. I stayed awake in my bed, that bed where I had cried over the death of my husband, where I had dreamed of seeing my grandchildren grow up, where I had planned to grow old with dignity. Now that bed felt like a coffin where I was waiting for my burial in life. Morning arrived like a death sentence. I woke up with the bitter taste of betrayal still stuck in my throat, pretending I had slept well when in reality I had spent the whole night planning how to escape the trap my own children had set for me. The smell of freshly brewed coffee rose from the kitchen. That same coffee I had prepared for them for decades, and now they made it to celebrate my funeral in life. Brenda knocked on my bedroom door with those soft knuckles that used to calm me, but now they sounded like hammer blows. "Good morning, Mom. How did you sleep?" Her fake voice, sweetened like poisonous honey, made me nauseous. I got up slowly, pretending the fragility they wanted to see, while inside I was boiling with contained anger. I went down the stairs holding onto the handrail like a helpless old woman. Every step calculated so they wouldn't suspect that I had discovered their diabolical plan. The living room was exactly the same as the night before, but now everything looked different under the light of day. My furniture, my memories, my whole life seemed foreign to me, as if it no longer belonged to me. Raphael was sitting on Emma's favorite armchair, reading the newspaper with the calmness of someone who had already won the war. He was wearing the blue shirt I had given him on Father's Day, the same shirt that now looked like a costume of a loving son. "Good morning, Mom," he said without looking up from the newspaper, as if it were a normal day and not the day they were going to exile me forever. Paula was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, using my fine china plates, the ones I only brought out for special occasions. How ironic that my last breakfast at home was served on the dishes of great celebrations. "I made your favorite toast, dear mother-in-law," she said with that fake smile that I now recognized as pure acting. I sat at the table where I had had breakfast for 30 years, where I had celebrated so many birthdays, where I had cried so many sorrows, and now it would witness my last meal as a free woman. The bread tasted like cardboard, the orange juice was sour. Everything had lost its flavor since I discovered the truth about my children. "Mom, we have a surprise for you," announced Brenda with that sing-song voice she used when she was a child and had done something mischievous. She took a golden envelope from her purse, the kind used for elegant invitations. "We're giving you a trip to Spain, to a beautiful place where you'll meet people your age and be super comfortable." The envelope contained the documents of my sentence disguised as a gift, flight tickets, nursing home information, medical authorizations, everything perfectly planned to make it seem like an act of filial love instead of the crime it really was. The photos of the place showed perfect gardens and bright rooms, but I knew it would be my golden prison. "I don't want to go anywhere," I told them with the firmest voice I could muster. "I'm fine here at my house." Raphael slammed the newspaper down on the table with a loud thud that made the cups shake. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore. Yesterday you forgot to turn off the gas valve. You could have caused an explosion." Liar. I had never forgotten anything. But that would be their excuse to the world. Paula came over and took my hands with that fake tenderness she had perfected over the years. "Elena, my love, it's for your own good. There, you'll have nurses 24/7, activities, home-cooked meals, everything you need at your age." At my age, as if 66 years old were synonymous with mental incapacity. "Also," Brenda added, playing with her phone, "we've talked to Dr. Maurice, and he agrees. He says you need constant medical supervision." The name Maurice came out of her mouth like another stab. My trusted doctor, the man who knew every one of my ailments, every one of my concerns, had betrayed me for money. Raphael stood up and began walking around the living room like a caged lion. "The plane leaves this afternoon, Mom. Everything's already arranged. There's no turning back." This afternoon, I had only a few hours of freedom left before being deported like a criminal to a foreign country where I would die alone and forgotten. "And what if I don't want to go?" I asked, already knowing the answer, but needing to hear it from their own lips. They all looked at each other with the complicity of criminals who had rehearsed every move. "It's not optional, Mom," Brenda replied with a coldness that pierced my bones. "We've already signed all the papers legally. We're your guardians now." Guardians. My own children had become my owners while I slept, trusting in their love. They had used my trust, my unconditional love, my blind faith in family to legally enslave me. It was the masterstroke of a perfect scam. Paula went up to my room to help me pack, but in reality, it was to make sure I didn't take anything valuable. She checked every drawer, every corner, every hiding place where I might have stored jewelry or important documents. "You don't need so many things, Elena," she told me as she separated my life into two piles, what I could take and what would stay for them. My family photos went straight into the discard pile. "There you'll have activities to keep you busy. You won't have time to feel nostalgic," she explained as she threw my wedding photo, Raphael's birth photo, Brenda's first day of school photo, 40 years of family history discarded like computer spam. The smell of my home was fading, replaced by Paula's aggressive perfume and the disinfectant they had used to clean every trace of my presence. It was as if they were erasing me from the map before I even left, preparing the stage for a life without Elena. The most humiliating moment came when they knocked on the door, and Dr. Maurice appeared with his black briefcase and that smile that had once reassured me. "Dear Elena, how are you?" he asked with that sickeningly sweet voice I now recognized as pure falsehood. He was there to examine me and sign the papers that would certify my supposed dementia, the document that would legalize my kidnapping. "Sit here, Elena," he said, pointing to the couch where I had often received my guests. Now, I was the uncomfortable guest in my own living room. Maurice opened his briefcase with the calmness of someone who had done this 1,000 times, pulling out medical instruments that gleamed under the light like butcher knives. Raphael sat beside me, taking my arm with that fake tenderness that disgusted me. "Calm down, Mom. The doctor just wants to check that you're okay for the trip." The trip. What a beautiful word to disguise forced exile. Paula recorded everything with her phone, creating evidence of her concern for my well-being. "Elena, do you remember what you had for breakfast today?" asked Maurice, jotting down my answers in a notebook. Every question was a trap, every answer another knot in the rope that would legally strangle me. "Do you know what day it is today? Do you remember the name of the president?" Questions designed to confuse me, to make me doubt my own sanity. Brenda came over with fake tears running down her cheeks. "Doctor, yesterday she forgot to turn off the stove. We're really worried. We don't know what else could happen." Lie after lie, constructing an alternate reality where I was a senile old woman who needed to be admitted for her own good. Also, Paula added with a performance worthy of an award. "Last night we found her walking around the house in her pajamas saying there were burglars. We think she's having hallucinations." Hallucinations. What irony. If the only burglars in this house were the three of them, stealing my dignity in broad daylight. Maurice nodded with the fake wisdom of someone who had already made the decision before conducting the examination. "It's normal at your age, Elena. The brain deteriorates and needs constant supervision." My brain was perfectly fine, well enough to discover their plan and plan my revenge. "But doctor," I said with the most trembling voice I could feign, "I feel fine here at home. I don't want to go anywhere." My words echoed against the walls like screams in an empty room. No one was listening, no one believed me, no one defended me. It was like being in a trial where all the judges had already decided my guilt. Raphael showed Maurice a pile of papers he had taken from his briefcase. Power of attorney, medical authorizations, documents that made me legally incapable. "We've got everything ready, doctor. We just need your signature to make it official." The signature that would bury me alive, that would turn me into a ghost of my own existence. "Elena, this is for your own good," Maurice told me as he signed each document with that golden pen that shone like blood-stained gold. "In Spain, you'll be better cared for. You'll have company, activities, everything someone your age needs." Someone my age, as if 66 were a terminal illness. Paula helped me put on my coat, that black coat I had bought for my husband's funeral, and that I would now wear for my own social burial. "You look beautiful, Elena," she lied to me as she buttoned it up like I was a little girl. "You'll make lots of new friends." The taxi waited outside with the engine running, like a hearse ready to take me to my final destination. Raphael carried my small suitcase, the one that contained barely the essentials to survive, while they stayed behind with a house full of memories and treasures accumulated over decades. Brenda hugged me at the door, and for a moment, just for a moment, I felt that maybe there was a trace of real love in that hug. "We'll visit you soon, Mom." He whispered in my ear, but his words sounded hollow like a politician's campaign promises. "Take care," I said, looking at them for the last time, standing in the doorway of my house, knowing that it would probably be the last time I would see them. Raphael raised his hand in a farewell gesture that seemed more like a papal blessing than a loving son's goodbye. The taxi slowly pulled away down the street where I had lived my entire adult life, where I had raised my children, where I had planned to grow old surrounded by family love. Now, that street was becoming a memory, a mental photograph I would have to keep forever. Paula was already in the garden watering my plants, as if she were the new owner of the house. Raphael had gone back inside, probably to start planning the sale of my furniture. Brenda waved her hand until I lost sight of the house, pretending to be sad until the very last second. During the drive to the airport, the taxi driver tried to make small talk. "Vacation?" he asked, looking at me through the rearview mirror. "Something like that," I replied, because how could I explain to a stranger that my own children had sold me like old livestock? How could I tell him that I was on my way to exile disguised as a gift? At the airport, Raphael handed me the travel documents like a tour agency employee. "Everything's in order, Mom. When we arrive, someone from the nursing home will be waiting for you." Someone from the nursing home. I didn't even know the name of the person who would receive me at my new prison, and I didn't care anymore. The plane took off, carrying my last traces of hope toward the gray clouds covering Madrid. 8 hours of flight to the place where my children had decided I would die alone. 8 hours to process that the family for whom I had sacrificed my entire life had betrayed me in the most cruel way possible. The flight attendant smiled at me with that professional kindness while I pretended to read a magazine, but the words blurred between the tears I didn't want to shed. When we landed in Barajas, the Spanish cold hit my face like a slap of reality. A man with a sign that read Elena Morales, San Rafael Residence, was waiting for me at the exit, dressed in a white uniform that looked more like a nurse's than a chauffeur's. "Welcome to Madrid, Mrs. Elena," he said with that forced courtesy of someone who works with disposable elderly people. The ride to the nursing home was a journey through my new reality. Unknown streets, a familiar language but strange accents, faces that would never know or remember me. Madrid was a beautiful city, but for me, it had become a gilded prison where I would serve my sentence of abandonment. San Rafael Residence stood like a palace of white marble, with perfectly manicured gardens and windows that gleamed under the afternoon sun. It was exactly as it had looked in the brochure photos, beautiful on the outside and cold on the inside. The director, a 50-year-old woman with a businesslike smile, received me in the lobby as if I were a tourist arriving at a luxury hotel. "Mrs. Elena, we're so glad to have you with us," she said while reviewing my papers with the efficiency of someone processing human merchandise. "Your family has told us so much about you. Here you'll be very comfortable. We have activities, physiotherapy, entertainment, everything a person in your situation needs." My situation, as if being abandoned by children were a medical condition with a scientific name. They assigned me room 204, a small but clean room with a view of the garden, where I would spend my final years watching flowers grow that others had planted while my own children sold the flowers I had cultivated for decades. The first night at San Rafael was the longest night of my life. The bed was comfortable, the food decent, the staff kind, but none of that could fill the void I felt in my chest. There were elderly people playing cards in the common room, others watching television, some painting landscapes, all pretending that being there was a choice and not a sentence. Maria, my roommate, was 80 years old and had been in the nursing home for 3 years. "At first it hurts," she told me as she prepared to sleep. "But then you get used to it. The children have their own lives. We've already done our time." Her resignation made me feel more pity than anger, as if she had accepted that being a mother was a temporary job with an expiration date. During the first weeks, I tried calling Raphael and Brenda, but they always had excuses. "We're too busy with work, Mom. We'll call you next week. We can't talk now." Little by little, I began to understand that my deportation also included my social death, my gradual elimination from their lives until I became a ghost of the past. The letters I sent them came back unopened. The emails bounced back as if my address had been blocked. It was as if Elena Morales had died the day I boarded that plane, as if the woman who had raised, fed, educated, and loved them unconditionally had never existed. One afternoon, while walking through the nursing home gardens, I overheard a nurse talking on the phone about a resident whose family had sold her house without telling her. "It's what always happens," she said with the casualness of someone who had seen this 1,000 times. "They bring them here and then forget they exist." Her words froze my blood because I knew she was talking about me. That night, I decided to do something I should have done from the first day: call my lawyer in Brazil. Patricia Herrera had been my legal advisor for 15 years. A woman of integrity who knew all my assets, all my investments, all my important documents. If anyone could help me, it was her. "Elena, where are you?" was the first thing she asked when she heard my voice. Your children came to my office saying you died of a heart attack in Spain. They even brought a fake death certificate. The world came crashing down on me. My own children had legally killed me to speed up the inheritance. Patricia, I'm alive and I need your help, I said with a broken voice. I told her everything, the deceit, the nursing home, the fake documents, the sale of my house, the entire diabolical plan they had executed with military precision. Every word that left my mouth sounded like a horror movie, but it was my reality. Elena, this is very serious. If they presented a fake death certificate, they committed fraud, documentary fraud, but I need you to return to Brazil so we can act legally. Return. That word sounded impossible from my Spanish prison, but Patricia was right. I couldn't fight from a distance. How can I get out of here if legally I'm incapable? I asked, feeling like despair was choking me. Leave that to me, she replied with the determination I had always admired in her. I'll send a legal representative to Madrid. This won't stay like this. During the next few days, I pretended to be adapting to the nursing home while I secretly planned my escape. I smiled at the group activities, participated in the therapies, ate in the common dining room. All the while, my mind was working at full speed, planning my revenge. Patricia's representative arrived. The following week, a Spanish lawyer named Ricardo Mendoza, who reviewed all my documents and confirmed what we already knew. My internment had been based on forged documents and perjured testimonies. Mrs. Elena, you are here illegally. This is kidnapping disguised as medical care. Ricardo Mendoza had worked as a private detective for 2 weeks, gathering evidence of the scam my children had orchestrated with the precision of professional criminals. Each day that passed in the nursing home, I pretended to be the resigned old woman they expected, but inside, I was boiling with anger, planning every move of my counterattack. Elena, this is worse than we thought, Ricardo said during one of our secret meetings in the nursing home garden. Your children not only falsified your death, but they have already sold your house, emptied your bank accounts, and are living like millionaires with your money. Each word was another stab to my already broken heart. Patricia called me every night to coordinate the rescue operation. We need you to return without them finding out. If they discover you're alive before it's too late, they'll hide the evidence and it will be impossible to recover your assets. It was a race against time where every second counted. My plan began to take shape when I discovered there was a computer for residents' use at the nursing home. During the nights, when everyone was asleep, I would sneak downstairs to check my online bank accounts. What I saw confirmed my worst suspicions. My life savings had disappeared, transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. Rafael had opened accounts under the names of ghost companies to launder my money. Paula had bought the beachfront apartment she had always dreamed of, using my savings as if they were her own. Brenda had paid for her children's private school with the money I had saved for my own medical expenses. It was a systemic betrayal, planned down to the last detail. But my most devastating discovery came when I found Paula's social media accounts. She had posted photos of Mi Casa, completely remodeled, with new furniture bought with my money. In one photo, she was toasting with champagne in the garden, celebrating the new phase of their lives. Her friends' comments congratulated her for freeing herself from her toxic mother-in-law. Brenda had been even crueler in her posts. She uploaded a video crying, talking about how difficult it had been to lose her mom to senile dementia and thanking her followers for their support during such hard times. 500 people had commented, sending condolences for my supposed mental illness. That night, I couldn't sleep. Seeing how my own children had turned my destruction into content for social media filled me with a rage I didn't know existed inside me. But that rage transformed into cold determination, into a revenge plan that would be as perfect as their scam had been. Ricardo brought me encouraging news the following week. Patricia had already filed a criminal complaint for fraud, document forgery, and embezzlement. She had also obtained a court order to freeze all bank accounts associated with my name. Justice was starting to move slowly but relentlessly. But Elena, she added seriously, we need you to return soon. The investigation will move faster if you're here to testify. Returning meant facing my children, looking them in the eye knowing what they had done, pretending to be surprised when they saw me rise from the dead. My escape from the nursing home was easier than I expected. Ricardo had arranged all the legal paperwork to prove that my internment had been fraudulent. The director of San Rafael apologized profusely, explaining that they had acted in good faith, relying on documents that seemed legitimate. Mrs. Elena, we are very sorry about this situation. This has never happened in our institution. The flight back to Brazil was completely different from the one I had taken. I was no longer a defeated old woman being deported by her children, but a 66-year-old woman planning the sweetest revenge of her life. Every kilometer that brought me closer to home was another kilometer closer to justice. Patricia was waiting for me at Sao Paulo airport with a smile I hadn't seen since before discovering the betrayal. "Elena, you're glowing," she said, hugging me as if I were a sister returning from war, ready to give those ungrateful children the surprise of their lives. During the drive to my city, Patricia updated me on everything she had discovered during my absence. Rafael had bought a luxury car. Paula had undergone full facial surgery at the most expensive clinic in the city. Brenda had remodeled her entire house. All with your money, Elena, but they can't touch a penny more, and they know I've returned. I asked, feeling my heart race with excitement. They have no idea. Officially, you're still dead to them. They're going to get the surprise of their lives when you show up at the court hearing next week. Patricia had booked a hotel for me near the city center, where I could prepare for the final confrontation without my children suspecting anything. Elena, I want you to know that during these months I've been gathering evidence. I have audio recordings, screenshots, bank statements, everything we need to prove their guilt. That night, in the solitude of my hotel room, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a different woman. The months in Spain had hardened me, giving me a strength I didn't know I had. I was no longer the naive Elena who had blindly trusted in family love. I was a wiser, stronger, and definitely more dangerous Elena. Tomorrow, we begin the counteroffensive, I told myself in the mirror as I prepared for bed. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby, knowing that justice was on my side and that my ungrateful children were about to receive the most expensive lesson of their lives. The morning of the confrontation arrived like a dawn of justice. Patricia had planned everything with the precision of a general preparing for a decisive battle. Elena, today your children will discover they killed the golden goose. But the goose is alive, and she's furious, she told me as we reviewed the documents one last time in her office. The plan was perfect. Rafael and Brenda had been summoned to the notary to sign the last papers for their deceased mother's inheritance. They thought they were going to receive the deeds to additional properties they had discovered among my documents. Their greed had blinded them so much that they didn't suspect anything when Patricia urgently called them. "Are you ready for this?" Patricia asked as we walked toward the notary's conference room. My heart was beating like a war drum, but my mind was as cold as steel. More than ready. I've been waiting for months for this moment. We arrived early and positioned ourselves strategically. The silence that followed my appearance was so absolute that I could hear the beats of my own heart and the sound of 3 souls crashing into hell. Raphael was the first to see me, and his face turned into a mask of pure horror. The blood drained from his face as if he had seen death personified. Mom, he stammered with a voice that seemed to come from the beyond. But you're dead. I completed his sentence with a smile I had been holding onto for months. No, Raphael, very much alive, very lucid, and very furious. My voice sounded different, deeper, more powerful. It was the voice of a woman who had risen to seek justice. Brenda fainted. She literally collapsed in her chair like a sack of potatoes. Her eyes rolled back as her brain refused to process the reality of my presence. Paula held her with trembling hands, but her eyes were fixed on me as if I were a supernatural apparition. Elena, my love, Paula stammered, trying to regain that fake smile she had perfected. How wonderful to see you. We thought you. Her voice cracked because she couldn't complete the lie in front of the living evidence of my existence. You thought I was dead, I said, slowly walking around the table like a predator stalking its prey. Or did you expect me to be dead because there's a big difference between those two things, don't you think? Raphael tried to stand up, but his legs couldn't hold him. Mom, can we explain everything to you? There was a misunderstanding, a confusion with the papers. His voice sounded like a little boy asking for forgiveness after breaking something valuable. A misunderstanding? I repeated with a laugh that came from the soul, but it wasn't a laugh of joy, it was one of pure justice. Calling Dr. Mauricio to certify my dementia was a misunderstanding. Emptying my bank accounts was a misunderstanding. Selling my house was a misunderstanding. Patricia opened another folder and began spreading photographs on the table. They were screenshots of my children's social media, photos of their luxury purchases, videos of their celebrations. Irrefutable evidence of how they had celebrated my supposed death while spending my money. Look at this, Patricia said, pointing to a photo of Paula toasting with champagne. Here's Paula celebrating her new life the same day you admitted me to the nursing home in Spain. Was that also a misunderstanding? Brenda had regained consciousness, but she seemed to be in shock. Her eyes moved from my face to the photos as if she were trying to process two incompatible realities. Mom, we thought it was the best for you. The nursing home was beautiful, it had good care. The best for me? I exploded with an anger I had been holding back for months. The best for me was to die alone and abandoned in a foreign country while you spent my lifetime savings. The best for me was to falsify my death to speed up the inheritance. Raphael tried one last desperate move. Mom, everything can be fixed. We can give everything back to you, the house, the money, everything. It was a mistake, a moment of confusion. His voice cracked with every word, like a house of cards falling piece by piece. Give it back. I laughed with a bitterness that came from the depths of my heart. Are you going to give me back the months of humiliation? Are you going to give me back the nights I spent crying thinking my own children had forgotten me forever? Are you going to give me back the trust one had in family? Patricia approached my children with a final folder, the thickest of them all. This is the criminal complaint we have filed against you. Document fraud, embezzlement, forgery of public documents, and kidnapping. Each of these crimes carries a minimum prison sentence of 5 years. The sound that came from Raphael's throat was like the moan of a wounded animal. Paula began to cry, but they weren't tears of repentance. They were tears of self-pity. Tears for her ruined future, not for the damage they had caused me. Brenda was the first to attempt the path of pleading, falling to her knees before me like a penitent, seeking divine absolution. Mom, forgive us, please. We made a terrible mistake, but we're your family. You can't destroy us like this. Her tears soaked the marble floor, but I had cried oceans in Spain, and my tears had run out forever. Family. I repeated the word as if it were poison in my mouth. Families take care of each other, protect each other, love each other unconditionally. You treated me like trash that needed to be thrown as far away as possible. My voice sounded serene, but every word was loaded with months of accumulated pain. Raphael tried to approach me with his arms outstretched, as if a hug could erase months of betrayal. Mom, I know we made mistakes, but we can start over. We're your blood, you can't forget that. Blood. What irony that he mentioned blood when he had drained all of mine without anesthesia. My blood, I murmured, looking at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. My blood that I nourished for 9 months in my womb, that I raised with love, that I protected from all the dangers of the world. And in the end, my own blood was the one that poisoned me. His words bounced against my ears like stones against a steel wall. Patricia spread out on the table the complete inventory of everything they had stolen. House sold for 2 million reis. Bank accounts emptied for a value of 800,000 reis. Jewelry sold. Antique furniture auctioned off. Even my car had been sold. The total amounted to almost 3 million reis, which they had squandered in 6 months. Look at this detail, Patricia said, pointing to a specific line on the document. They spent 50,000 reis in a single night at a casino in Las Vegas. 50,000 reis that Elena had saved by working 18-hour days for years. Each number was another stab to my already wounded dignity. Paula tried the victim strategy. Elena, I only followed my husband. Wives have to support their husbands. No, I never wanted to hurt you. How convenient it was to become the victim when they had been my executioners for months. Marital support. I would be hidden in the adjacent office, listening to everything through the slightly open door, waiting for the perfect moment to make my triumphant entrance. Patricia had a recorder on her desk and cameras installed to document the entire meeting. At exactly 10 a.m., I heard the familiar voices of my children in the hallway. Raphael was speaking with that arrogance of a nouveau riche he had developed by spending my money. "I hope this is the last signature. I'm tired of all this paperwork," he said as his expensive leather shoes echoed against the marble floor. Brenda laughed with that fake laugh she had perfected to hide her malice. "At least we're finally done with all these legal procedures." Proud? The word made me nauseous. I would be proud to see them rot in prison for being thieves and emotional parasites. Paula entered complaining about traffic, carrying a designer handbag that cost more than the monthly salary of a working-class family. "How much longer is this going to take?" "I have a spa appointment at noon." The spa, of course, paid with my money, while I had spent months eating nursing home food and sleeping on a borrowed bed. Patricia greeted them with that professional smile that perfectly hid her true intentions. "Good morning, Morales family. Thank you for coming so promptly." "More matters?" asked Raphael with the impatience of someone who thinks they've already won. "We thought we had finished all the legal formalities." His voice sounded annoyed, as if bureaucracy were just a minor obstacle in his perfect robbery plan. "Well," replied Patricia, organizing the papers on her desk, "some irregularities have come up that we need to clarify before proceeding with the final transfers." The word irregularities hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Brenda leaned forward with that fake curiosity she used when she wanted to seem innocent. "What kind of irregularities?" "We've been completely transparent throughout this process." "Transparent like mud," I thought from my hiding place. "Well," Patricia continued with the calmness of a hunter stalking its prey, "we've received information suggesting that the death certificate initially presented might have some inconsistencies." The words fell like stones into a quiet pond. The silence that followed was so dense it could be cut with a knife. I heard Raphael moving nervously in his chair, Paula holding her breath for a second, and Brenda trying to buy time to process the information. "Inconsistencies," Raphael repeated in a voice that tried to sound confident but trembled slightly. "I don't understand what you mean." "The certificate was issued by the hospital in Madrid, where Mom died." Every lie that came out of his mouth was another confession of his guilt. Patricia opened a thick folder full of documents she had been preparing for weeks. Indeed, the Madrid hospital issued a certificate, but it turns out the person who died in that hospital was named Elena Morales Gonzalez, not Elena Morales Herrera as your mother. The sound of papers falling to the floor indicated that someone had lost control of their documents. Probably Brenda, who had always been the most nervous of the two siblings when it came to maintaining elaborate lies. "It must be an administrative error," Paula stammered with that high-pitched voice she used when she was scared. "Hospitals make mistakes all the time, especially with foreign patients." Every word she said sank them deeper into their own legal grave. "How curious that you mentioned that," Patricia responded with a smile I couldn't see but could feel in her voice, "because we also contacted the San Rafael residence in Madrid, where your mother was supposedly interned." The silence filled the room again, but this time it was different. It was the silence of criminals who feel the trap they built for themselves closing in. I could imagine their pale faces, their sweaty hands, their brains desperately working to find a way out. "And what did they tell you?" asked Brenda in a voice so small I could barely hear her from my hiding place. It was the voice of a child who knows she's been caught doing something very bad. "They told us something very interesting," Patricia continued, savoring each word like fine wine. "They told us that Elena Morales Herrera was discharged 3 weeks ago and returned to Brazil. Very much alive, very lucid, and very upset about being interned based on forged documents." The crash that followed Patricia's words sounded like a symphony of panic. Chairs falling, muffled screams, footsteps rushing to the door. But Patricia had locked it, and my dear children were trapped in their own trap like rats in a maze with no way out. "That's impossible," Raphael shouted with a voice that cracked like glass under pressure. "My mother is dead. We saw the certificate. We paid for the funeral." Every word was another confession of their guilt. Every scream was another proof of their desperation. Brenda started hyperventilating, that short, shallow sound she made when she was a child, and we'd catch her in a lie. Patricia, this must be a mistake. Mom died of a heart attack in Spain. We did everything by the law. We consulted doctors, we followed procedures. Her voice faded like smoke in the wind. Procedures, Patricia interrupted with a coldness that filled me with pride. Are you referring to the procedures where you forged your mother's signature on notarial documents, or the procedures where you bribed a doctor to certify a non-existent dementia? Paula tried to maintain composure, but her voice trembled like a leaf in a storm. We acted in good faith. Elena was sick. Confused. She couldn't take care of herself. Everything we did was for her own good. For my good. What refined cynicism. Wrapping their greed in words of filial love. It was my moment. The moment I had dreamed of during all those cold nights in the Spanish nursing home. During all those days of humiliation and abandonment, I rose from my chair with the dignity of a queen returning to reclaim her usurped throne. I opened the door to the adjacent office and entered the conference room like a ghost returning to settle scores with the living. I confronted her with a look that could melt steel. Marital support is recording videos crying over my supposed dementia while you spent my money on plastic surgeries. It's marital support to post on social media that you freed yourself from the toxic mother-in-law. The color drained completely from Paula's face when she realized we had seen her posts. Her mask of the loving daughter-in-law collapsed like a house of wet cards. Elena, those posts. I was confused, hurt. I didn't know how to process everything. Confused. I exploded, standing up from my chair with an energy I didn't know I had. Confused was what I was in that Spanish nursing home, wondering what I had done wrong to deserve such punishment. Confused was what I was when the letters I sent them came back unopened. Raphael made one last desperate attempt at emotional manipulation. Mom, think of the grandchildren. They love you. They can't grow up knowing their grandmother sent their parents to prison. The grandchildren. Of course, they would use the children as a human shield in their last resort. The grandchildren. I repeated with infinite sadness. The same grandchildren you told that I was dead. The same grandchildren who cried at my fake funeral while you pretended to be sad. Are you going to explain to them that their grandmother resurrected or that their parents are liars? Patricia then revealed the final blow. Elena, there's something else you need to know. We found evidence that this wasn't a spontaneous decision. They planned your internment for at least 6 months. We have emails between them discussing how to divide your inheritance since January of this year. The silence that followed was deafening. 6 months. They had been planning my exile for half a year, smiling in my face while secretly plotting my destruction. Every hug, every "I love you, Mom," every smile had been an act while they prepared my burial in life. 6 months. I repeated, feeling something break definitively inside my heart. 6 months pretending to love me while planning how to get rid of me. 6 months of Judas kisses on my cheek. It was the perfect betrayal, the cruelest, the most calculated. Brenda tried one last desperate lie. Mom, those emails were misinterpreted. We only wanted to secure your future, find the best place for you to be comfortable. Her voice cracked because she didn't even believe her own words. Patricia read one of the emails aloud. I've already researched 3 nursing homes in Spain. The one in Madrid is perfect because she doesn't speak Spanish and will be completely isolated. I estimate that in 2 years, at most, we'll be free. 2 years at most. I repeated the words as if they were a death sentence. They calculated that in 2 years, I would be dead from sadness and abandonment. What a precise mathematical formula to measure the time of agony for their own mother. My voice sounded hollow, as if it came from a tomb. Elena, Patricia said, taking my arm with the tenderness my own children had denied me. Do you want to proceed with the criminal charges, or do you prefer we settle this civilly? It was my moment to decide between legal justice and personal revenge. I looked at my 3 executioners trembling before me, waiting for my maternal love to be stronger than my thirst for justice. For 66 years, I had been Elena the mother, Elena the protector, Elena who forgave everything. But that Elena had died in that Spanish nursing home. Proceed with all the charges, I said with a firmness that surprised even me. I want them to pay for everything they've done to me. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of humiliation, it was my full resurrection, my transformation from victim to avenger. 6 months after that day at the notary, I wake up every morning in my new house by the sea, a house I bought with the money I recovered from my treacherous children. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks is the only music I need to accompany my morning coffee, served in porcelain cups I chose myself, without the pressure of pleasing anyone but me. Justice moved slowly but relentlessly. Raphael was sentenced to 8 years in prison for aggravated fraud and document forgery. Paula received 6 years as an accomplice, and her beachfront apartment was seized to pay for the damages. Brenda, being considered less guilty, received 5 years of probation and community service at a nursing home. What poetic irony that now she has to take care of abandoned elderly people every day. I recovered every cent of my stolen money, plus the interest and penalties the judge deemed fair. 3.5 million reais were returned to my accounts. But more important than the money was recovering my dignity. Patricia became not only my lawyer, but my closest friend, the sister I never had, but that destiny gave me in my golden years. My new will is a legal masterpiece. All of my estate will be divided between 5 charities that help elderly people abandoned by their families. My children will receive exactly 1 real each, so they can buy a piece of gum and remember the bitter taste of betrayal. As I wrote in a special clause that Patricia drafted with a malicious smile. The letters of pleading came for months. First from prison. Then through lawyers, and later through mutual friends trying to act as mediators. All of them ended up in the same fireplace where I burn logs every night, while I read books I never had time to enjoy when I was a devoted mother. The fire consumes their words just as they consumed my love. The grandchildren were the hardest to process. Their other grandparents gradually explained the truth to them, and now they understand that Grandma Elena is not dead, but she is also not available for those who betrayed her. It's a hard lesson, but a necessary one about the consequences of family actions. I hope that one day they understand that I protected their ethical future more than their emotional comfort. My daily routine is simple and perfect. I wake up with the sun. I water the plants in my garden that grow freely, without the pressure of impressing fake visitors. I read for hours in my hammock under the shade of a tree I planted the day I moved here. In the afternoons, I paint watercolors of the seascape. Something I always wanted to do but never had the time for because I was busy being the perfect mother to imperfect children. The neighbors know me as Mrs. Elena, the mysterious lady who came from the city with a story that no one knows completely, but everyone respects. I greet them kindly. I help when they may need me, but I keep my privacy like a treasure I learned to value after decades of family invasion. Mauricio, my betrayer doctor, lost his medical license and faces criminal charges for falsifying medical documents. His practice closed, his patients abandoned him, and now he works as a health insurance salesman. Life has its own way of bringing justice beyond the courts. At night, when the sun sets, painting the sky in orange and pink, I sit on my terrace with a glass of red wine and reflect on the woman I was and the woman I've become. The first one lived for others, sacrificed everything for family love. She believed being a mother was synonymous with being a martyr. The second lives for herself. She loves without sacrificing herself and understands that respect is earned with clear boundaries. I feel no resentment. Resentment is a poison one takes, hoping others will die. And I chose to live fully instead of dying slowly from bitterness. I feel justice, I feel peace, I feel freedom. My children taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, that unconditional love only works when it's reciprocal. Sometimes they ask me if I miss them. The answer is complex. I miss the children they were, not the adults they became. I miss the illusions I had about them, not the reality of what they proved to be. It's like missing a book that turned out to have a terrible ending. You miss the hope, not the disappointment. My new will includes a letter that will be read after my natural death. In it, I explain that I chose to die surrounded by dignity rather than live surrounded by hypocrisy, that I preferred honest solitude to fake company, and that I learned that sometimes the purest love is the one that withdraws when it is no longer valued. This morning, while writing these reflections in my journal, the mailman arrives with a certified letter. It's from Raphael from prison. Another plea for forgiveness. Without opening it, I walk to the fireplace where the morning fire burns. The letter is consumed in seconds, turning into ashes that rise up the chimney toward the blue sky. I sit in my favorite armchair, the one I chose for comfort, not to impress visitors, and open my poetry book to the marked page. I read aloud to myself because my voice deserves to be heard, even if only by my ears. Outside, the seagulls fly freely over the endless ocean. And I smile because I finally understand that the true legacy I can leave is not money or property, but the example of a woman who learned to value herself before it was too late. The sea breeze enters through the open window, carrying away the last trace of the Elena I was and blessing the Elena I am. I don't need forgiveness from those who betrayed me because I've already forgiven myself for taking so long to love myself. This is my true resurrection. Not returning to the life I had, but being born into the life I deserve.